All right. Oh, somebody's getting cut off. There we go. Hey. All right. So we are here. We're live. We're going to be reviewing Red Pill Pete. We're joined by Pete. And I think some of us have seen the video. Some of us have not. I'm the one of the people who have not seen the video. I'm Pierce. You people should know who I am. And I'm joined by a whole bunch of people. David, if you want to start off the introductions.
Hey there, I'm David. I couldn't resist. I had to watch the video before we got here. I walk around and carry a cardboard cutout of myself and ask people what's important in their life and have a lot of fun doing it.
Cool. We'll save Pete for last. Hey, Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Matt, I have a very tiny YouTube channel called Mighty Conversations where I post the best of my attempts at street epistemology.
Cool. Chase.
What up? I'm Chase Avier, the crazy vegan that your mother warned you about. But yeah, we're compartmentalized, and so I'm gonna be trying to do. I try to do the SE thing in a very strict manner, and we'll get into that. But just try to keep some of these things a little separate sometimes. But I'm a big fan of Pete's work, and Pierce and Matt and David. So nice to see y'all.
Nice to see you too. And finally, Pete himself, the guest of the evening.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've seen the video, so go easy on me. Go real easy on me, okay? I'm new to this street epistemological sort of approach. With animal rights outreach, we tend to try to use like the Socratic method, Socratic reasoning, which is sort of on par with that. But this using SE strictly and in this manner is completely new to me. So I welcome all of your help with this.
I think we can give some good feedback for you. I hope so.
Yeah, right. Very cool. And Pierce, did you want to guide this specifically in a specific direction right now? Because I just kind of wanted to make sure that Pete doesn't feel too attacked or anything like that. Like, I think he's in good spirits and all. And I think Pete, are you mostly familiar with Peter Boghossian's work in street epistemology? Like, is that where you found it, or
no? Originally with I guess it would have really been like. What is that on Jubilee? I mean, years and years ago, they would use this sort of approach where they would separate people in a room based upon where they stood on a claim, and that's what originally turned me on to the idea. And then years ago, I found Anthony Magnabosco, and then I found what's his name? Reese, Cordial Curiosity.
Yeah, Reed.
I found his Reed. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
forgive me, Reed. I found his channel, and I loved the way that he used 0 out of 10 scale or 1 out of 10 scale, and I started to use that during my AV outreach, Anonymous for the Voiceless. It's this sort of cube thing that we do.
Yeah, where you show slaughter videos in public, exactly. And some people are wearing masks while they're showing the videos on a computer or something, and then another activist is talking to the public, explaining what they're seeing and how to go vegan and all that.
Precisely. Yeah. So after seeing Cordial Curiosity, I would use that during the cubes, and I would start the conversation off by asking people, "Are you against animal abuse on a scale of 1 to 10? How fervently are you against it?" And then that number would usually go down by the end of the conversation.
Interesting.
So yeah. And then obviously seeing Peter Boghossian use the lines, real simple. I'm like, why haven't I thought of this?
Yeah, the spectrum, they call it spectrum street epistemology, where it's like instead of a one-on-one interview, it's like a group interview where one person is interviewing different people to where they stand on, agree, disagree, slightly disagree, strongly disagree, that kind of thing about any given claim, whether it's politics or religion or anything of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, cool. Does anybody else have anything to say right now?
Well, I guess I just have one thing before we even get started. Pete, I guess with using street epistemology, what is your overall goal?
So the overall goal is, well, with this specific form, as Chase was just kind of pointing out, you can have a conversation with multiple people at once. and that's just a beautiful thing. Instead of having a one-on-one, the tensions are lessened. You can have people talk to one another instead of necessarily having a debate with me. They can just explore their thoughts with one another, and this allows them to move on the spectrum, and hopefully they leave, being a little bit more vegan than when they started the conversation. Obviously, my goal is to veganize the world for the animals that are suffering in slaughterhouses. So whatever way I can get through to people and spark thought about what they purchase on a daily and how that affects animals, that's my overall goal here. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that brings us to the question of what should we focus on? Should we try to hide that bias? Because it's possible that if we do our best to hide our bias and maintain rapport and do all the quote unquote proper street epistemology tools, we'll call it strict SE, because sometimes I think it's good to mix typical outreach with some SE tools, but if we were to let's assume for a second that doing strict SE would be the most effective tactic at getting someone to critically reflect and question their beliefs and then lead to change, then we might want to just maintain that strict SE approach. I'm not sold that is the best way to do it, and in fact I usually don't practice street epistemology. I've only done it maybe 10 times. I'm getting better at it though. And I really love I've seen like 200 videos of SE, so it's a really great approach. But I also get into debates and protests just like you and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, and mind you, this is like this video is like my fourth or fifth time ever trying it.
Gotcha. So. Yeah, and I just think that maybe there is a way to do street epistemology, or either as a one-on-one or as a group spectrum SE, in such a way that can further an activist's goals, but in not an so obvious way. Yeah, as we see sometimes from Peter Boghossian, not to throw slack at him, but sometimes, like I've done it too, where when I'm interviewing somebody, I might make my bias a little too evident.
And I'm certainly guilty of that, as you'll see in the video. I could be much better about asking open-ended questions, and you'll still see in my comments on these videos, like, I can't believe you let him get away with that. You should have called him out on this and explained this. And I'm like, that's not the purpose of this sort of outreach.
It's hard to catch every thread in the moment too.
Yeah. And this is an emotional topic too, because at the other end of this conversation are literal animals having their throats slit and their blood spilled. So it's not just some, everyday topic where there's not a direct victim involved. And that's part of the beauty of this is it helps me remove myself from that a bit, remove my emotions from it a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think other activists can use that sort of as a tool, because some people find it very difficult to have these conversations with people because they just want to, hit them with the facts, and you need to change, and these are the facts. And, with this approach, you can sort of take a step back. I'm just trying to get better at that. Sure.
And I think I saw one of your other in street epistemology videos where it went pretty well. I was like, hey, this could probably work, because it seemed like you withheld your bias at least until the end, when you were like, okay, now that we've gone through like what seemed to be pretty close to strict SE, and then you were doing like outreach of, let me give you some resources and stuff like that. And I think maybe that's appropriate, So, but we'll debate that later.
And one last thing before we get started, I just want to say that I think revealing your bias, even at the beginning, I think can still be consistent with street epistemology. I think as long as you stay neutral within your questioning, that I think it's okay to be upfront and say, hey, I'm a vegan activist, and I'm going to practice street epistemology, and this is what street epistemology is. I think that might be something that's consistent. I think that might be okay.
Yeah, that might be something worth trying. Like, try both approaches. Go out one day with no vegan shirt or signs or anything, and just be totally unbiased in your presentation. but and then another time go out with a vegan shirt and everything and go ahead and say this is what I'm doing and why and see what you might get different reactions.
Sure.
All right. Without further ado, we'll get started then. That's not the right button. There we go. All right.
We are at the UT campus. Thank you so much, sir, for another round of Animal Rights Spectrum Street Epistemology. And we are going to set up here in the shade because it is in the hundreds. I don't know, it's like 105 degrees or something. And there are tons of people out here. Check this out. But there are tons of booths set up as well. So that's either going to work to our advantage or disadvantage. We shall see. You're bringing up the point of sort of habits and traditions.
Yep.
For the second time. Now, because we've done something for a long time, does that make it necessity for one's survival? Is that then necessary, or does it make it a necessity?
It's not a necessity just because something is a conservative value necessarily, or something that you've done for a very long time. It's not a necessity, but it is something that has value to a person and does not hurt another person. And I think that's where my line is.
Okay,
Human to
I
animal
understand.
is different.
If it's not a necessity, though, is that then a contradiction to it being necessary?
Well, then I have my other point as well that I made, that if it's what's readily available to you and it's what you can eat, then it's what you should eat. Especially with vegan, we're not just talking about killing the animal, we're talking about animal products, so milk, honey, and those are things that are readily accessible and have necessary proteins inside of them. Honey in particular doesn't expire, and it gives a lot more sugar and nutrients to people, so it's just not.
So if things...
I just want to jump in here. Was there anything before the video started? It seems like we jumped in kind of in the middle here.
Yeah, this is just a short snippet, and then it'll go to the intro of my normal intro, and then it'll go to the very beginning of the conversation.
Gotcha. Okay,
So,
I didn't realize this was a teaser.
Yeah, sorry, teaser.
Sorry.
were readily available, like agave instead of honey.
Real quick, if you want to pause. Yeah, in order to, if you, for future reference, if you want to make it more clear that this is a flashback or whatever, or a teaser, you can, put that, like I'll put it in the middle of the screen or somewhere on the screen, like, coming up, or, or you can change the color tint of the whole screen to like black and white. I've seen some SEers do. It'll start black and white for a little bit, and then color will come on, or there's a few different options.
Cool.
Or rice, beans, or lentils, or legumes, or seasonal fruits, or seasonal vegetables. If those sorts of things were readily available, would it then be unnecessary?
If all of those things were readily available,
Like in most grocery stores.
if all of those things were readily available and meat products were then not readily available side by side with that.
Oh, okay. So
Because then you're limiting what people are able to eat, and you're labeling them as an abuse, because animal abuse is a crime, So
I see.
It's an interesting bit. I think
We
it's
are
there's
rolling.
a lot of different parts for a teaser. Maybe just get that last bit there. If they're right beside each other, and then he poses the question about the choice. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it was a bit long.
A little bit.
Check, mic check. Okay, so check it out. So this is the neutral line, right? Obviously the camera is set up right there. So we're gonna face the camera. This is the neutral. If you guys will line up behind the neutral in single file, behind one another. Yeah, like just get right behind him. Yeah. So right here, you've got neutral, right? Then you have slightly agree, and then strongly agree.
Understood.
And then of course in the opposite, slightly disagree, strongly disagree.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to state a claim. And I'm going hard on this one. I'm going right off the rip. I'm going hard. And then I'll count down. So you'll kind of, let it roll around in your head a little bit, figure out where you stand, where you're going to stand, where you're going to move to. And then I'll count down from 5. And so that you guys don't affect one another, you guys will both move when I say 1 at the same time, right? So, like I said, I'm going hard. This is a difficult one. if you're not vegan, you're an animal abuser.
And that's
Think about it. This is the claim. Agree, remember, slightly, agree, strongly, and then slightly, disagree, strongly.
Pause real quick.
If you're wait, don't move yet.
So one, just two things. One, of course, is you're wearing an Animal Liberation Front T-shirt. You know, so just bear that in mind. We talked about that a little bit ago. That maybe that's a good idea, maybe not. You were forthcoming about how intense the question or the claim is going to be, which I think is fine. And it added a little bit of comedy, a little brevity. It's like it's going to be a hard one kind of thing. And that could be okay, I think. And then, but the placement of where you're standing, I understand why, like that you're trying to just be in the frame, in the camera frame, along with them. But I'm wondering if it could potentially, like in the future, not necessarily in this specific instance, but where you're standing is on one of the lines, right? Where it might tempt them to go that direction because you're on it. Not in this case because you would be on the other side, but or no, I think you would be. In any case, just bear in mind that where you're standing might affect them. So you might, even though it would be like a bad camera angle or something, you might want to just position yourself a little bit in front of the camera in a neutral position, maybe right in front of them, in between them and the camera.
I think that's a good point, Chase.
Yeah, good point.
What I was going to say was, with regards to the claim, I think it's a super interesting claim to explore, and there's nothing wrong with it. However, I think it could be a little bit more clear. You may want to define what abuse is, because otherwise, once you get into the actual SE part of it, you might be just talking about definitions. And I try to avoid that with Spectrum, because you really just want to talk about the claim itself and not about the definitions, at least in my opinion. So that might.
If I remember correctly, I think I do define the term abuse shortly into the video, which I should have at the beginning. Yeah.
That's good. Let's get into it.
Either way. Okay.
You gotta count to one.
Okay. You got where you're going to move in your head? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move.
Oh, faked out.
Okay. So we have a regular disagree and then a strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you see him in the frame? We're good? Cool. And what's your name?
Avon.
Avon? Pete, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so since you're a little bit more extreme than him, right? You're strongly disagree.
Okay.
Can you tell us why you moved to
pause? So yeah, just calling somebody extreme might be a misplaced opportunity for neutrality, or cordiality. Because just I don't like when people call me extreme either. I get what you're saying. You weren't trying to demonize him. You were just trying to put him on the situation that he's at there. But
no. Us vegans get called extreme all the time. I was just beating them to the chase.
Bit of a colloquialism.
You could have just said that the position that he took was stronger or more strong than your other participant.
There you go.
Absolutely.
You could have said that he's more confident. That'd be another way to word it.
Yeah.
this position?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like animal abuse to eat things that humans have been eating for centuries and is a part of your culture, and is a part of like who you are as a person. That's not animal abuse, that's just what you eat. And I can't dictate that, especially when meat is something that's readily accessible in the US with a lot of like food trucks and stuff like that, and eating vegan specifically without animal products is a lot more difficult if you don't have the like disposable income to do so.
Okay, a few good points there. Now, I guess I should have defined this before we started. So let's define the terms here. So with abuse, we'll define it as causing unnecessary harm to someone.
Okay.
So do you believe that eating animals is causing unnecessary harm to those animals?
Unnecessary, no. Because there is a point to be made about food and culture. Like I love to cook.
Yeah.
So of course I'm going to make this point, but I don't think it's necessarily unnecessary harm for you to do something that you believe is like preserving what you did for centuries or what your ancestors did, or what's readily available to you. That's not unnecessary. That's still necessary. We put people in prison. That's not unnecessary harm, but it is harm. Not all harm is unnecessary.
Now, you're bringing up the point of sort of habits and traditions. For the second time. Now, because we've done something for a long time, does that make it necessity for one's survival? Is that then necessary, or does it make it a necessity?
It's not.
Yep, that's exactly what you needed to ask at that point. That's exactly what I would have asked. I probably would have used slightly different words, but the way you phrased it was terrific as well.
Mm-hmm. I also like that you started by sort of repeating back his point, which is also A+.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to be more cognizant of that. And when you're in the moment, and I'm so used to typical, even when using Socratic reasoning, I mean, it's easy to give the facts and be more straightforward. So I'm holding back a lot there. But
well, the beauty of SC when it's done, it can be is it changes the feeling of this guy's trying to prove me wrong, as much as, hey, we're trying to figure out how this works, and so it kind of shifts the tone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when they see us being humble and open-minded and patient, they feel empowered to reflect that same positive behavior.
You're modeling the behavior you want them to. Yep.
It's not a necessity just because something is a conservative value necessarily, or something that you've done for a very long time. It's not a necessity, but it is something that has value to a person and does not hurt another person. And I think that's where my line is.
Okay.
I think he said it's not a necessity, but the way you defined abuse, like there's some sort of clash there definitionally. So I'm interested to see what you do from here on out.
Can I ask real quick? I'm just curious, who has not seen the video other than Pierce? So Matt and Pierce have not seen it. Okay. Okay, cool.
Human to
I
animal
understand.
is different.
If it's not a necessity, though, is that then a contradiction to it being necessary?
Well, then I have my other point as well that I made, that if it's what's readily available to you and it's what you can eat, then it's what you should eat. Especially with vegan, we're not just talking about killing the animal, we're talking about animal products, so milk, honey, and those are things that are readily accessible and have necessary proteins inside of them. Honey in particular doesn't expire, and it gives a lot more sugar and nutrients to people, so it's just not.
So if things were readily available, like agave instead of honey, or rice, beans, or lentils, or legumes, or seasonal fruits, or seasonal vegetables, if those sorts of things were readily available, would it then be unnecessary?
If all of the...
I almost think like that was presenting evidence, but at the same time, maybe not. I don't know.
It was like sneaky enough that I think you got away with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hypothetical.
You're locked and loaded. I loved it. I mean, you knew, like, these things.
Yeah, because I mean, we often use even in strict street epistemology, we use hypotheticals to say, well, if there was an alternative, if this wasn't the case, would it be okay? So I think it's appropriate. It is, of course, had that little sneak to it.
Yeah, I was just fighting back. I just wanted to go into, how he pointed out with dairy, for instance. He sort of made the claim that animals don't have to die, with animal byproducts such as milk, is what he was trying to get at. And I was fighting back on just going into that and explaining how in the dairy industry animals do die just the same, and the suffering is even prolonged.
Yeah.
So like my mind's all scrambled because I'm wanting to go back to that, but I'm trying to stay on task. I'm trying to keep the SE approach. So it's difficult. I'm going to get better at it with more practice.
Yeah.
With your help.
For sure. Yeah. I don't know how to go, maybe you can circle back to what you wanted to, like there was something you said earlier that made me think about, and then, probe them again on that if you can recall, but it's hard to remember everything that's happening in a conversation.
And actively listen. Yeah.
Yeah.
The active listening
Yeah.
part. Yep. When you already have these preconceived things going on, and I don't want to push them away. I want to keep this conversation going for as long as possible. So I don't want to, come across as too pointed. So it's all a dance.
Sometimes
that
you
I'm figuring
gotta
out.
interrupt people in a nice way to say, hey, before you go to the next point, can we clarify that one that you were just saying? I'd really like. I don't understand. I want to understand your position better. Can you clarify that? And then
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you say like, sorry to interrupt, I hate to interrupt, I want to understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a bummer when it comes to the spectrum. When you're doing it one-on-one, nobody looks at you weird if you're taking notes down, which is a
That was
great
just gonna
way
say, yeah.
to reference back. Another thing I was thinking was a great way that you could ask the same question that you did without giving all of the examples that you did would be to ask them to think of some example. Can you think of any examples of foods that are vegan, and then have him do the thinking work for it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a more open question format.
And if he doesn't come up with any examples, I think you can still ask the question without examples. You can still ask it, if there were these foods available that were readily available that serve the same nutritional purpose, blah, 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 blah. So you could go down that road too.
Yeah, it is frustrating to not just like paint the picture of, look, we got rice, pasta, fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, beans,
Yeah.
bread.
Yeah, once you hit more than 3 items, it's kind of like, hey, duh. It's almost like a duh thing, but you got to keep it simple whenever you're trying to get them to come to the thought, as opposed to just telling them.
Yeah, I guess I still, because oftentimes I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of rapport in order to insert something like some necessary fact or something but that may be straying from SE, or sometimes like you can be doing strict SE and be willing to sacrifice a tiny amount of rapport for the sake of pushing a little boundary. So long as it's still within the rules of SC, that's allowed to happen. Right?
Fair enough.
Okay.
We'll continue on.
Those things were readily available.
Like in most grocery stores.
If all of those things were readily available and meat products were then not readily available side by side with that.
Oh, okay. So
because then you're limiting what people are able to eat, and you're labeling them as an abuse, because animal abuse is a crime, So
I see.
You're directly restricting what people are able to eat, and I don't think I agree with that.
So as long as there's a choice between the two, it's
if those are
a
readily
necessity.
available, then you as a person could say, hey, you don't care about animals.
As long as there's a choice, then it's a necessity. I feel like you were trying to repeat back what he was saying. Was that what he was saying? Maybe?
It kind of was. I was just trying to point out how nonsensical it was.
I mean,
I don't know if I did that accurately.
I think the emotional thing you're talking about might be kicking in here. I mean, because
it's been there.
There's if it were me and I was in that situation and he said that, I'd say something like, okay, so the freedom to choose is very important. Are there anything that people could choose that we do regulate? Like maybe we don't eat certain animals, or maybe we don't eat other humans or something. That's the opportunity to kind of talk about how there's value in his principle of having choice, but there is limitations to it, and so then you can focus on him exploring the limitations as opposed to just saying, it's nonsensical.
So one question could be like, are there any limitations to what people are legally allowed to eat, or like should there be any based around social norms, like are there limitations to what people are allowed to eat or can eat? And he might, so that's why it's like an more open question, and then it might come to his head on his own.
And you may consider asking it in a completely different way. You might phrase it like, you're on strongly disagree, and it seems like it's because you value choice. That's really important to you, and it seems like you value the choice more importantly than the life or well-being of an animal. Is that the case? Is that what you're saying? You could phrase it like that too. All right, we'll continue.
Animals, but like you could not label that as animal abuse,
Okay.
so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. And then why did you? I mean, there's something holding you. Did you move?
Oh,
No?
I
Okay.
was just kind of out of the frame.
You're
That was
good. You're good. No, you're in the frame.
Yeah.
It's covering the whole spectrum here. So something must be holding you back as to why you didn't move to strongly disagree. So why did you move to just disagree?
So I think just with my belief in general, I think it is very situational. There are people who do go out of their way to, I guess, promote a carnivore diet, and I know a lot of them do tend to kind of fall on that side.
Yeah.
With me, again, very situational. As he was saying, when meat eating is a part of a culture for a long time and it is a readily available thing, I do believe that people have, the ability to do that. And then again, as you brought up the hypothetical, if fruits, vegetables were more, I guess, available or cost efficient as well for families that are in low income areas and all this other stuff, I do believe that those are options.
Do you think that those things are available, readily available?
Not as much as I would like them to be. Not as much as I would like them
I do agree with that because, like, overall, like even
Right
even when
here,
you're talking about climate change,
If he would have said that he gave his reason on that, you just say, so if it was shown to be available, would that move you on the scale? Would you move up on the scale?
Totally.
And-
In retrospect, I recognize that when watching it. Yeah.
Really hard to do in the moment. Totally get it.
Also, like a really simple, quick, and I don't know if this was the right spot for it or not. Maybe it was when you were talking with the first gentleman because he mentioned the same thing. But you could ask something as simple as like, why is something that we've always done like as a tradition? Why is that a good reason to do something? Or like, if it's part of some culture, what makes like the cultural aspect of it a good reason to do whatever it is that you're talking about?
Yeah, I asked it, but I framed it differently. I sort of said, if we've been doing something for a long time, if it's part of our culture, does that make it a necessity? Because we were on the necessity
Right.
aspect. Yeah,
Right.
totally correct.
meat consumption takes up way more water and resources than vegetable consumption is. So continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
So you're saying like there's certain like grocery stores like HEB or Walmart grocery store or Whole Foods where there are animal flesh products, but there doesn't exist like lentils, beans, rice, seasonal fruits, seasonal vegetables?
Well, no, those things do exist. It's just that, I guess, from what I've seen and from what I've experienced, more foods that are processed and they tend to be cheaper. And I know when you're in a situation, you're trying to look for the cheaper alternative. You're not trying to look for foods that are healthy and all this other stuff. I know that sounds bad, but that's just where I've been in the past. And it's like, all these other foods are good. All these other foods are good. I don't disagree with veganism or vegetarianism at all, because those are healthy alternatives. But I do think in terms of like labeling meat consumption as abuse, I don't think that's something you should really do unless, again, carnivore diet, you're actively using it as a political statement.
Yeah.
To, I guess, attack vegans or attack vegetarians and whatnot. That's kind of my opinion on it.
Okay. To the affordability point, what
One thing I just want to say is he mentioned like he was like in this position again. Sounds like a tough financial spot, if I'm understanding him correctly. Now would have been probably a good time to build a little bit of rapport and just say, "Hey, I'm sorry you went through that." Blah blah blah. That's what I would have done anyways, because it sounds like he's either nervous or getting slightly emotional. I can't really read which one, but one of those two, I think.
I think what happened right there was that, like, I could be wrong, but I think he was confronted with the fact that there's again, all of those different plant foods available at all those different stores, and that they are cheaper, and and so he wanted to talk about processed food, but then he kind of realized that there wasn't like it was that it's not just processed vegan foods out there that are available and affordable. There's also whole foods. But
yeah, and
Maybe.
I'm trying so hard to practice active listening and really like fully hear their point, but I'm so incredibly perplexed. I'm like, what world do these guys live in where they think that fruits and vegetables and pasta and legumes and beans don't exist next to animal flesh? Like what grocery store are they shopping?
I mean,
So,
the thing I like about SC, and I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Pete.
you're good.
Is that there's what I think people have is they have a social answer to questions. They have an answer they give when somebody asks that question. Whether it's veganism, whether it's a religious thing, this is what they say. This is how you answer that question. And a lot of times they're not even like thinking about it. And the instinct is to be like, well, here's what's wrong with that, and that. And that's what happens most of the time when they have that discussion. So they get nervous. And if you can graciously get through that answer, like give them space to give that answer, and then walk them past that to get to what make them actually interact with the concepts, then you're more likely to get them to actually talk about stuff. But if you sit there and just try to debunk the real heavy and aggressively debunk the social answers, they've been taught to put their guard up. That's we all have. We all, if you ask me about certain things, I mean, I'm sure I do the same thing. Go ahead.
I hear you. I agree with a lot of that. I do feel I probably agree with all of it. I just wanted to make sure that Pete realizes, like, I feel like you are still being very patient and letting them have the floor to explain their beliefs, and so that's just another thing in favor for you.
Yeah, this is like kind of nitpicking, like for the sake of you're wanting to review and like just review concepts of stuff like that. Like I've seen a good number of your things and stuff like that. I know you're out there trying, and you give a lot of grace and room to a lot of people, and that's not like a character attack of any kind.
No, I don't. I appreciate the nitpick. Nitpick away.
I got one more nitpick
there. I get better.
I have one too. So
Me too.
Me on the other hand, I'm like, stop picking my nits.
At least for me, like I'm not a vegan. I don't know if everybody else is vegans or not.
All right, so here's the claim.
Yes.
I have a good reason to not be vegan. Go. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That's why this thought terrifies me, because I think this is one of those things where I don't know if I have great reasons, and this is one of the things that I have to personally wrestle with. So here we go. Are you going to red pill me, Pete? I don't know, but at least as putting myself in their shoes, whenever you list off things like, oh, what about Walmart, Whole Foods, this, that almost feels almost like a snarky. Like it feels like, I mean, again, it's another duh. It's like, I mean, you think about it for 2 seconds. You got this, and this one. You got lentils. You got this.
And it's frustrating though, because you did form it as a question. It's like you're trying your best. You're trying to do the thing.
Yeah,
and
you're in debate mode.
Yeah, they can. A person can still just have this natural defense come up. And so we're just trying to and I'm trying to learn how to do this better in my activism too, or when I'm doing SE, of just like, is there a way to just totally prevent their defensive wall from coming up? Because if there is, that'd be nice, or at least prevent it from coming up as much as possible, and you were trying, I mean, it's so frustrating that you have to do even more than that, but
the tiny nitpick that I had was the choice to use the word flesh, animal flesh products.
It makes me wiggle. I'll squirm every time you say it.
Yeah, it's technically correct, absolutely, but maybe.
I mean, maybe that's the point. That sounds like the effect. You're getting the effect you want in that regard.
Well, for sure, for activism, yeah.
Yeah, it's purposeful. I purposely avoid using euphemisms. and maybe it's beneficial to use them when engaging in strict SE. I guess I'm trying to find that sweet spot where I don't want to say it like it is not. I don't want to. When it's rape, I want to call it rape. When it's murder, I want to call it murder. When it's flesh, I want to call it flesh. So yeah, trying to walk that fine line.
I hear you.
Just to follow that up, though, really quick, I wanted to say I liked that you picked up on that they both were talking about affordability, and that's where your next question went before we paused here. I thought that was awesome. And then I also noticed that they both, and I haven't seen the video, so I don't know if you go into this yet or not, but they both mentioned healthiness, and I thought that would be a really good avenue to explore too. I don't know if you do, but absolutely.
And right before we get started, David said something that kind of got the wheels turning in my own head. And I think it would have been really beneficial to do like a real reason check. So if you didn't have this reason available, if this wasn't the tradition to eat meat, would you still feel strongly? Would you still be on the strongly disagree? And then you could see if that was really important or if that really wasn't a factor overall.
You could spend 15, 20 minutes talking about tradition, and then you convince him otherwise. You prove it's not necessary, and he still has another reason that didn't come up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's happened to me a few times where or I think I was running street epistemology on a young Catholic guy, and he realized that one of the reasons he gave, I can't remember if it was, I think it was population, like the amount of people who believed in the Catholic Church, that means that it's true, and the longevity of it for 2,000 years. But after a short couple of questions, he was like, actually, yeah, that's not a great reason, but I have better reasons. So that was cool.
All right, we'll continue on.
Do you think is more per pound, a pound of cow flesh or a pound of rice or beans or potatoes, say, generally speaking?
Probably the meat at this point.
Is cheaper or more expensive?
More expensive.
More expensive. Okay. You would agree with that?
At this point, yeah, but then not, especially around here, we don't have kitchens, and a lot of the things they have out here are going to be animal products because those are the things that people know are readily available, and you can't.
A lot of fruits and vegetables can be eaten without even having to cook them in the first place. Yeah, so that's a nice point. Yeah, it can be both. There's a little bit.
That's fair.
That was a statement of fruits and vegetables can be snacked up or whatever, packaged and snacked on later. Is there a way to form that as a question? See how I just did it right there? I just opened it up. I did an open question on you instead of saying what it could have been. So is there a way that it could have been formed as a question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now I feel like we're at sort of an impasse with the term or the definition of the term abuse. So in order to, get a cow or a chicken or a pig's flesh on your plate, what do you have to do to them first?
Kill it. You have to kill it.
Yeah, and how typically, like, let's say...
Let's pause real quick. One thing about inclusive language. So another way to prevent somebody's defenses from coming up is to use inclusive language, like, when we buy these products, what are we doing even though you're not doing it because you're vegan, but like we as a collective or as a group, as a species, when we as a consumer are doing this, what is the outcome, instead of when you do this for your meat on your plate,
Yeah. SE's supposed to be about being on the same team, kind of. We're trying to figure out how we understand it.
Good point, yeah.
Pigs, for instance, how typically are they killed in America?
I mean, pretty frequent. I don't eat pork in particular.
What main animals do you eat?
Beef, chicken.
Cows and chickens.
Yeah,
okay,
chicken,
so typically, how are cows? We'll say cows. How are cows killed?
I know here in America, it's a lot of processing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of.
No, I just mean like the physical act. How do they actually take?
They
their
take
lives?
the chicken and they put it in the thing that like twists off their head, right? And then it cuts it off. Yeah.
That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Now, would you consider that abuse? Hanging someone upside down by their legs on a
Someone,
hook?
Yes. An animal, not necessarily.
If an animal's not a someone, are they a something?
Yeah.
They're an inanimate object? I
That
think.
question was
Not
a
necessarily
hit for me. I was like, oh, that's a good understanding. That's as a non-vegan, I was like, man, you kind of put them in a different category for me there.
Yeah, and going back to like not using language like flesh, using the term someone to describe an animal, a non-human animal, would be right in line with not using a term like flesh. Just avoid using that word someone, because I know what kind of response typically it's going to evoke.
Because it did, like, as much as I agree with you that animals are someone, not something, they are not inanimate objects, but you see how it did derail him. It made him, and it kind of exposed, your bias again. But yeah, the main problem there, I think, was that it derailed him to not answer the specific thing you were trying to get at. So, and I think so you could have maybe kept him on track by saying an animal instead of someone. Because either way, it's still going to have that strong impact that you and I are looking for, Yeah. It's okay to abuse or would you consider, hanging an animal upside down and stringing their neck, would you consider that abuse?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, instead of the kind of blunt phrasing that was used, if you almost frame it as like an outsider test, like if someone held a belief that you could do this to another human being, would that be considered abuse? Or someone, maybe
dog.
like that would be better?
Or to a dog.
Or to a dog, yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes there's a risk of jumping from, chicken to human. People are like, whoa, that's a pretty big jump.
Whoa.
I don't think it really is a lot of times. You know what I mean? Like, there's some really cool birds out there, and there's some terrible humans out there. But in any case, like if you jump from chicken to dog, it's an easier jump for people to make in their head when they're like, yeah, like so as an outsider test, like Pierce is talking about, and you can explain to them what an outsider test is right before administering the outsider test. But say something like, if someone were to say that, hanging a puppy upside down and wringing their neck was not abuse, would you agree with that? Or I don't know how else Pierce would phrase that outsider test.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I probably would.
Would that not be called abuse, or would you not qualify that as abuse? I think
maybe a question you could ask would be, I'm sorry, Pierce, ADHD kicked in. Maybe you could pose the question, what would you consider an abuse of an animal?
Yeah.
And then start that as a baseline to go with the discussion. And then once you finally get them to define it, you understand their definition. If they give a description of something that would be abuse and it fits the animal processing thing, then you throw in the someone versus something almost kind of thing. Then you have your more pungent points of things like that. And then you're dealing with their terms as opposed to them having defense against the things you're positing.
Yeah, it was a missed opportunity there for sure.
Hard in the moment, for sure.
I'm trying to remember his name. Another vegan activist who Debug Your Brain on YouTube. Debug Your Brain. He was doing an interview of some non-vegans, and I think one of the first questions he asked was, what is abuse? And a nice open question like that. And the person was saying, like kicking an animal or depriving them of food or something. And then he said, what about dropping a boulder on them? and they were like, oh, well, that would be even worse than abuse. That'd be like murder, And I thought that was, pretty, one interesting way to do it. There could be other ways that could have gone down, but
yeah, I'm on board with that. All right, we'll continue on.
Inanimate, but in the same way that we classify human rights as human rights and not animal rights.
Okay.
That is not, like, child abuse is a lot more severe than animal abuse.
Yeah.
It's just a different standard.
I do believe in terms of standards. It's just that, you know, with, I guess, humans being at the place that we are,
Yeah.
that we value certain actions to other organisms over actions to other, like, let's just
Yeah.
say, like, we think of child abuse much worse
Yeah.
than that too of
An adult.
a farmer killing a child.
Saying something is harsh because
I think what this this dude on the left said is his more or less real reason. I think what he said first about like affordability, blah blah blah. I think that was kind of his social answer. I think this might be his real answer right there about how he said we value other specific organisms and not all organisms.
Yeah, I think it was partially his social answer and also him regurgitating what the other gentleman said. Because
Right.
if you'll notice as the conversation goes on, too, the other guy kind of tries to steer the narrative for the both of them.
This is one of the drawbacks of Spectrum, is having these weird group social pressures at play while you're doing it.
Mhm.
It has lots of benefits, like you were saying. You can get them to think through it together or amongst themselves, but you have to deal with these negative aspects too.
Yeah, I think it would certainly benefit. It benefits. There's a benefit to having more than just two people, obviously, and when they're strangers rather than best buds like these two.
Yeah, that does change the dynamic for sure.
Yeah, because they already have a relationship dynamic coming into the conversation, so
Mhm.
they're working through all of that while trying to work through what I'm trying to walk them through. But
Mhm.
However, it is cool though that they'll be able to talk about this with each other later on.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
like in English specifically, we don't have the pronoun
So
to describe.
if they're not someone and they're not something,
That's my
what
point,
would
though,
we
is
say they
I
are?
think that's more of a limitation of the language, not of the way I feel about it.
Sure.
Because animal is different than plant is different than stone.
Yeah.
But thing and one are different, and there's only two distinctions. within
Sure,
language.
and maybe that's a mute point. Maybe we're stuck on semantics and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Let's say they're not someone or something, but they have the capacity to feel pain and suffering and joy and happiness, right? Like for instance, you were just saying how to abuse a child, there's
That could have been phrased as a
greater
question.
consequences usually to pay.
that
Was that
animals feel pain and pleasure. Like again, just another. Do you think that animals feel pain and pleasure and want
Yeah, I'm wondering how that could be phrased differently. I feel like it's kind of presenting evidence, but I feel like it's a fair question as well.
Maybe
Um,
what an animal have to do to be in the same category as humans?
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
what is it about human life that is so valuable? And if they can explain that, then maybe you can show. Well, does that relate to animals as well? Do animals have those same capacities?
Mm. What would you need to learn about, or what would you need to read or hear that would convince you that animals experience the same things that humans do?
Yeah.
And to abuse an adult. Now, why is that? Why is it worse to take it to harm a child?
Mostly because the child is naive and helpless.
Ah,
also because
they're vulnerable.
I mean, I get
Easily taken advantage
I
of.
get where you're getting at with the animal point. It's a human. Is my one distinction.
Okay.
And
So
we,
that's some
for
high
centuries,
messaging
have
right there,
agreed.
but it was funny. I enjoyed it, but just something to keep an eye out for.
That's good for the algorithm, but maybe not for changing minds.
We're trying to do both.
Yeah, I hear that. You're on your way.
Okay. We're going back to the
Where?
centuries thing. All right, reset just real quick. Come back to neutral just really quick. And I'm just
Right here?
and then we'll head out
You can-
after this. You
Hold
good?
on.
I want to change the subject.
You want to pause real quick?
Pause it.
You good? Good for one more?
You barely heard it. I don't know if anybody noticed it, especially with me saying, "Hey, hold on, pause it for a second." The guy standing in the back in the darker shirt. I don't know if you heard it, but when I called them to reset, he prompted the other guy to leave. He wanted to cut it out. right then and there, he was like, "Hey, you wanna get out of here? You wanna go? You wanna go?" And the other guy in the white shirt kind of ignored him and continued on. That's the first time he does it. He does it again, one or two more times. So at this point, I mean, I notice it as I'm resetting them, and so at this point, it becomes even more. I'm even more cognizant of how I'm coming across. I don't want to make them flee.
Yeah. So
Sure. Like, yeah, of course we don't want to, make them flee, but there can also be, something to be said about ending a conversation, earlier than you maybe would have wanted or something, not that this is the right time to end it or not, because you might even, know, right? But but sometimes, there is like a good reason to cut a conversation short. So longevity need not be, even though like from an activist perspective, I hear you, because it's kind of like, the more time I spend with them, the more I can get them thinking, the more information I can give them and stuff like that. But I often overstay my welcome. I'll tell you that much.
Well, my question for you all is, should I have done like I ignored it. I heard it, but I ignored it. I didn't address it. Should I have brought it up and in some way addressed it?
I think if you noticed it, then it would be a great opportunity to ask the question, hey, like, am I holding you guys up? Do you have like a couple more minutes where I'm just wrapping up, or do you guys really need to go? I don't want to like take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
And when you do it really like collaboratively like that, like you might get them to stay longer, even if they don't really want to.
Yeah, and if they leave earlier than you wanted them to, because you feel like you could have made more, progress if they'd have stayed, just remember that like they might regret later. They might regret having left so soon, because you did get them thinking about a lot of stuff, and they might want to actually, even though it's uncomfortable to talk about it right now, they might want to learn more about it later, because it is an interesting topic, that has a lot of nuance and stuff.
Okay.
And it's possible that he wanted to leave because things were getting a little bit too heavy, I guess would be the right word, and he needed time to kind of process and think about it. So you can think of it that way. But I definitely would have said something. I would have, like Matt said, I would have used collaborative language. Hey, I just want to talk for a couple more minutes, but if you have to go, totally understand.
Sure. And that would also help to build rapport if they do stay.
Yeah, exactly.
But also,
people don't want to feel trapped.
Yeah, but also I will say, like, with having had like 10,000 vegan conversations and seen a bunch of them as well, like it's an issue that people often get unnecessarily defensive about, even when the activist is being on their best behavior. Like it happens way too often, so it's really frustrating. But on the other side of that is that I used to make fun of vegans, and now look at me. So there's no matter how much people seem to negatively respond at first, you have no idea what's going to happen to that person in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, that's how I went vegan, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Turned on a video of Earthling Ed debates Meat Eater, and I turned it on to make fun of vegans, and went vegan 20 minutes into the video.
Nice.
Wow.
You good? Okay. So we're going to change the subject of the claim, and we're going to put humans in the place of these animals. So we'll switch it a little bit, the claim too. If you eat humans, you are an abuser of humans. Remember, agree is down here, disagree is down here. If you eat humans, you are an abuser of humans. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So just changing the subject. So now we're talking about humans. So now what is the distinction between a human or a non-human animal that makes one to slit their throats and eat them abuse, and the other to slit their throats and eat them not abuse? What is the trait difference?
Okay, so with animals in particular, when I say that like I'm defending people's rights to eat meat. That is more of just in the safest, humane way possible. I don't agree with the main processing of food as it is right now.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to humans, I guess just being able to see ourselves in another person does kind of take the value up a lot more. And there's plenty of people that I know just kind of make the whole argument that like, oh, you can consent to it. You can consent to be, there's people like that. But I just think that whatever works for a person, definitely not this, definitely not eating another person.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something you should do. But just whatever works in terms of actually eating meat.
Yeah.
That is humane, that does the least amount of pain possible.
But what is that trait difference between a human and a non-human that makes makes you land on?
Real quick,
It's not a bad.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick, like you might want to avoid saying "but." It's hard to do,
Yeah.
but I think you've done great so far at not doing that.
You just did it.
But I will say,
Yeah.
What I was gonna go ahead.
good. No, you go.
What I was gonna say is like, I like the question. It's not a bad question. It's great. I think I would have done something a little bit differently.
Okay.
I was really hoping you'd just say, why is that the case? And just leave it completely open-ended like that. Because I'm really wondering why it is that it sounds like he's saying that he values humans more than animals. At least that's what I'm hearing. And I would just want to know why that is the case. Why do you think that?
Yeah, is it too close-ended of a question to use the word trait, or is that like steering it?
I think it might be.
It is the reason that you're doing that like for trait-based arguments?
Because they might just be thinking, people have souls, or they might be thinking that, people have more memories, or more quantitative. I mean, maybe that could be seen as a trait, but they might not be categorizing it that.
Yeah.
And you're kind of
there's
boxing the conversation a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something for the to account for the differential treatment between the two groups. So I think it's whether you ask for a specific trait or if you leave it more open-ended, it's a proper thing to investigate.
Yeah, completely
I'd agree with
agree.
that. Yep.
Such an opposite point of the
Humans are
spectrum.
more intelligent, right? We're able to feel deeper. We have built these societies surrounded around humans,
Sure,
right?
What about humans that are less intelligent, say that are born with a mental deficiency?
They're
Do they-
still worth more than like a dog
But-
or a cat or a pig or a cow.
Okay, but they are less intelligent. Like they might have the same sentience or awareness or intelligence as, say, a cow.
This gets back to what he was saying. It's a human to a human.
You can
I
see
understand that you are a human regardless of your intellect level on the human scale,
Okay.
right?
So just species or in group?
I mean, even that. So if you've read any science fiction, in particular, Ender's Game is really good for this.
Okay.
The buggers, when they invade the human ships, right? They don't understand what they're doing because they don't understand what they're doing because they're an insect society, right?
Yeah.
They think that
I've heard of this,
if you only kill the queen is the main murder component, right?
Yeah.
So it's a thing of I, as a human, cannot relate to the animal directly, and part of that is because there's intelligence, but another part of that is just the emotional connection.
Yeah, and in the in group. So Ender's Game, you said, is the name of it?
Yeah.
So we could even use real life examples. I mean, for instance, the Third Reich, the Nazis, they looked at Jewish people, even though they were humans. They looked at them as something else. They looked at them as something and not someone. They saw them as below them. They saw them.
That would be maybe an opportunity, instead of mentioning the Nazis, to ask, have humans ever, treated other humans in the same way or something like that?
Yeah.
And what will pop into their minds is,
And you're getting them to try to have to say I understand it's a point of leverage, but they're naturally going to want to resist being associated with Nazis. So they're going to get their walls are going to go up in that, in my opinion, at least. That's my.
Yeah, this reminds me of a conversation that I had with an apologist, a Christian apologist, and it was some sort. We're talking about some sort of moral thing. I don't remember exactly, but he brought up Nazis, and like, if his goal was to get me to reflect, he didn't accomplish his goal when he was talking to me, because it was just an instant like, now you're just kind of making me a little upset here. So I would be mindful of that. It might come across like that. I think there's a better route. I don't know the better route, but there is a better route.
Yeah,
I
it
think
does
that's
seem
part
like-
of debate. I mean, that it's effective in debate in a lot of ways, because it's a dunk, and it, if you're doing it for the audience of getting the dunk, but again, just a little different atmosphere.
You do run the risk of having your conversation partners think that you're comparing them to Nazis. I know that's not what you're doing,
Right.
but it could happen. Yeah.
And just like usually, well, yeah, I'm just not going to say anything right there. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let's continue.
As not part of their in-group. So therefore they felt justified in doing what they would like to do to them. Is that similar?
No.
Is that a similar mindset?
I don't think so at all, because Jewish people are still humans. I think
I know, but no. I know they are. I obviously know they are. I'm part
Yeah,
Jewish.
got you.
But I'm saying the people who did these things in the Third Reich to the Jewish people, do you think they viewed them as less than them or not part of their in-group? And therefore they felt justified in doing the atrocities they did to them?
I don't think that those two things are comparable at all to like the way.
But do you think the Germans, the Nazis, felt that way towards the Jews?
Towards the Jew, I believe that they thought the Jews were lesser than them at a certain point. Yes,
So
and I get where
is there
you're
a similarity
going.
there?
I get where you're going to tie it to, but I don't think there's a similarity at all, because it is outright and overtly a completely separate species that you, as a human being, are different than.
But
And we established this concept because, like, if you want to see the difference between the way that the Nazis treat the Jews and the way that we would treat a pig, like, it's on a genetic
I understand
level,
that.
there's a complete difference.
I understand there's some differences.
If you saw his body language, he was kind of going like that a little bit. So I don't think he's giving it too much thought. He's putting up a wall right there. He's literally putting up a wall. So, I don't think this was very effective.
I agree. At this point, I was kind of just trying to get them to, not be so intellectually dishonest, because I couldn't get them to name a trait. They wouldn't be honest with me there. And then when they did finally attempt to name a trait difference that would justify the act of killing a non-human animal versus a human, they used the example of intelligence. And then when that was addressed, they changed it back to just blatantly being a human. So again, back to an arbitrary thing, not a trait. So at this point, I'm just like, be honest with me with something here.
It's frustrating, and like Pete and I, know about the fact that like pigs are, very much like little kids. They're innocent, gentle creatures that mean us no harm, and we put them in gas chambers. Like that's a literal thing. That's a standard industry practice. So it's frustrating for someone who's been inside the slaughterhouses, and who, me and Pete have been like traumatized from our actions, of trying to help these animals. And so, I'm just trying to make sure everybody understand what it's like inside the head of an activist for a minute, because it's hard to navigate all this stuff,
Yeah. It's hard to navigate intellectual dishonesty and apathy for so long, So
I want
we're trying to get better at it with this approach.
I hear you. Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're doing a lot of like process on it. And I mean, I've seen a lot of people just do absolute roast sessions and these kind of street interviews things, and it's I see you doing good with that. I want to address some of the comments that I saw coming up there. It's talking about what it feels like coddling the people, and it's not straightforward. It's whether or not it hurts their feelings or not. And I just want to emphasize that the goal is not to coddle the person. The goal is to reach a spot where you're actually talking about what they think about. Because as we said before, there are social answers, there's guards, there's walls, and it's not about hurting their feelings. You can say things that can hurt their feelings all day and hit them with broad facts all day. They could see the broad facts. They probably see the broad facts over and over again. But it's about presenting the facts in a place where it gets categorized in the right part of their
Brain.
logic and brain. And so this is a method of trying to, instead of just browbeat somebody and to say, okay, fine, he's right. God, it's more about discussing it. It's like you're talking with somebody who you care about or cares about you, and it gets you to the place where you can admit some of these things, and you're not going to get lambasted. You're not going to get ridiculed. You're not going to get just shut down if you give an unsure answer.
And do that on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And also like going with what I was saying earlier about being okay with ending a conversation, sooner than you might want. It can really, if you leave a good taste in their mouth, even though there are many unanswered questions or, many unasked questions, I should say, they really might feel the urge to go learn more. And I think maybe that's when, like after the conversation, if you give them a card with your contact information or resources or something, I think that might be appropriate,
Yeah, and I guess part of this too is, obviously we're filming this and putting this on YouTube or, other social media platforms. So it's not always necessarily trying to, get them to come to a conclusion on their own or go vegan on the spot. It's to point out some of their absurdities too to the people who are watching, so that people can see how silly some of these arguments are, and hopefully the ones watching will not want to identify with that sort of mindset and say, wow, is this the way I think?
Yeah.
On service level,
Yeah.
I don't want to be part of that sort of thinking. But
Sure,
yeah, go ahead.
sure.
Sorry.
And yeah, I hear what you're saying, and that raises the question of what should we be focusing on during an SE interview, as opposed to a debate, because with a debate it's like, yeah, you're probably not going to win over your opponent, because they're like a staunch advocate in the opposition of your cause, usually, so showing their ridiculousness in front of an audience. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But with an SE interview, it's, for me and for most practitioners of it, I think it's not about exposing their ridiculousness. It's about helping them maybe realize that they're, the reasons they have for holding their beliefs may or may not be warranted. They may not be warranted. They may not be strong reasons, and helping them realize that if they're not strong reasons, then can they be relied on to come to the conclusions that they have, and if not, then they need to revisit the issue, and they keep maintaining rapport through all that can be can be a fun and easy thing to do if you go into it with the right mindset and after some practice and stuff, and they can really appreciate that level of rapport. So that it just opens gates instead of building walls.
A really good tool too for like Chase was saying, not necessarily you don't necessarily want to make people look stupid, but at least for what your goals are, a great tool for highlighting, I think, what you want to highlight is the repeating back. If you were to ask that gentleman after he pointed to intelligence, something like, are you saying that it's okay for us to eat things that are unintelligent? That's a really great way of both showing your conversation partner and your audience what you think might be a lapse in judgment on their part.
Yeah, or less intelligent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fine lines here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll restart the video in just a sec, but I want to just say one last thing. I kind of want to paint an alternate reality if it was me asking the questions here. So I think, dang, I kind of forgot where I was going with it. So there was the human and animal comparison that you were kind of making. And I think I stated this earlier that I would have asked a more open-ended question. I would have said, like, why do you think that's the case, that humans are more valuable than animals, I think is the gist of what he was saying. And then let's assume that he gave a similar answer about intelligence. And then instead of going into the comparison with, mentally disabled folk or the Nazis, I think I would have asked it more like, if there was a human that had a less intelligence than an animal, or if there was an animal that was super intelligent, would that mean that we could eat that human? And would it mean that we couldn't eat this other animal?
Right.
Tell me how that works, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I think I try to do that with a hypothetical species of humanoids or something, I call them, coming up. Where their DNA is not human, but they look like humans. They have the intelligence of humans. They act like humans. Would that then be justified to eat them because they're now not part of your in-group, your species, as they are so fervently trying to point out? And it still doesn't work. But yeah. Let's keep going.
I'm excited to, let's see it.
I remember, just one last thing.
I'm trying to point out.
I just remember when Pierce ran Street Epistemology on a hunter in the
I was thinking the same thing.
Discord server, and Pierce asked the hunter, I have this hypothetical alien friend that I like to bring into these conversations named Alan the Alien, and he just comes to Earth and he's like just curious and wants to know what we're talking about and wants to know what truth is and stuff. Would it be okay to hunt Alan the Alien? And the hunter was like, huh. And like took some good long time to reflect. I don't know that it should have taken so long. In my opinion, I'm like, be nice to the alien, like, damn.
There was definitely reflection when I asked him that.
There's some similarities in the mindset, and to point out that it's a dangerous mindset. So should we continue along with this sort of...
I think it's a dangerous mindset to think that of humans, not to think that of animals.
But just because they're not part of your in-group.
Not in-group, not part of my species. And there's a completely different thing there.
So...
He
never said the word in-group.
Yeah, well, that's what species is.
Maybe to you. I mean, like, maybe by definition, but maybe not by his definition.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. On a tangent,
that's what...
Because it was you that brought up the word in group, right, from earlier. Also, like he never had mentioned that, right?
Yeah, I was trying to clarify and get him.
Yeah,
to,
I hear you.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what people... I mean, that's the term racism. That's how it's defined, as they're not part of my race. I see them as below me, right? So I can treat them differently. Isn't that what racism is?
If they're not part of your race, they are still a human, and that's
No. I'm saying
between those two.
the
I
racist
get what you're
mindset.
saying, but
The horrible person who thinks that. Is that...
Sorry. A closed question as opposed to open question of isn't it the case that as opposed to is it the case that?
Yeah.
So maybe we try to refrain from isn't it true that and just ask is it true that?
How they're thinking.
I get that you're making the argument that there is a gray area in between person, race, different species, but I don't think there is.
Speciesism, racism, yeah.
I think the line that we draw is directly at human and nothing below that, and I don't think that that's a problem.
But the only trait we can come up with is that they're human.
Yes,
because
that matters.
We tried intelligence, but we defunct that.
I don't think we did debunk intelligence. I think we are more intelligent.
I agree. We're more intelligent.
Yeah. Less intelligent, or like because of a genetic deficiency, is less intelligent.
They still deserve the same rights.
Yes,
you pointed out.
that's a human.
So that would sort of contradict
I don't
the
think
intelligence
it's a fallacy
claim.
to say that this person is a human and therefore they deserve human rights.
Okay.
I don't think it's wrong.
Did you have anything to add?
I just think that the way that we perceive things right now, the way that we perceive values, seeing other humans, seeing other animals, and all that, it's constantly changing. It's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I do think that,
And it's constantly been changing how we view each other in history as humans, right?
and I guess looking at it through a historical lens, we've seen what rhetoric does. We've seen what that does, and we've disproven it. You know, obviously Jewish people are human, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just, again, it's just the way that we see things as people, the way that we see consumption of meat, or the way that we treat other individuals that are not a part of
you could
ethnic
even
groups.
you could even extract this argument down to like the plant level, like, oh, a plant's less intelligent than you, so why don't you defend the plant? Or an amoeba is less intelligent than you, then why don't you defend the amoeba? It's not a matter of like then what level of animal are you defending on an intellect basis? The line being drawn specifically at species is not a problem for me, because then you can't push the line. Like, pushing the line any farther becomes a gray area issue. And I don't think that is a gray area issue.
I understand. If there was some hypothetical species, we called them humanoids, and they weren't actually human. They weren't part of our species, but they sort of looked like us and they had similar intelligence. Would you agree that they would deserve the same rights as humans do, or would they deserve similar rights to how you view non-human animals?
I really think that is situational.
Yeah, it's completely situational.
I really think it's a very situational thing.
Is there anything that I could say, hypothetically?
I would ask him about the situation. What situations would make a difference?
Yeah. Great question.
Important information. Yeah.
Anything that you could say to yourself, even, to get you to move anywhere else in the spectrum? Like, what would
eating humans part?
what sort of study or what sort of data could be shown to you?
I would avoid study and data kind of leading the witness, I guess. Let them come up with their own reasons, I suppose.
What would you need to see, or what would you need to hear? Yeah.
See or learn.
And you've kind of
Learn
shifted
stuff.
the conversation to trying to get them to kind of good reason to eat a human, as opposed to like there's
I
probably pretty strong on that.
I clarify it in a minute. What I meant to the original claim about non-human animals,
Oh, okay.
which I clarify in a second. But yeah, at this point, I'm sort of I'm asking this question because it's sort of the wrap up. I'm like,
Yeah.
I see this as really it's kind of becoming circular. I'm getting a bit frustrated. I know what data exists, or what I could show them that would make it very apparent the points that I'm trying to get across, and that is, if they were in the non-human animals position for just 1 minute, 60 seconds, if they were the one in the slaughterhouse, watching their friends or being shackled by their legs, there would be no question. There would be no debate. There would be no difficulty in trying to understand what I'm saying, and I'm sort of at that point with my mindset, and I'm wrapping it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
As a non-vegan myself, the thing he said about the line won't go down, not necessarily because I'm a non-vegan, but that one stuck out to me, because that seemed like a place you could say, was there a way the line could go up? And then, because it sounds like he's like, all right, I don't want to think about humans being edible, but maybe he's entertaining. He didn't cut off the idea that he can learn something about animals.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been an opportunity to talk about open-mindedness too. It sounded like he was kind of saying like, "Hey, I'm closed-minded. Nothing can change my mind." You can ask about like, should we hold beliefs where nothing could ever change our mind? Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was the case. You'd have to ask him.
And that was the point of me asking the question, to hopefully reveal to himself whether or not he's open-minded or closed-minded.
And not to talk too much. This might be my last bit. I'm sorry, but I like the turn. Like, you switch the question to say like, oh, well, if this was humans, would you have a different answer? I get the comparison and how it's supposed to show the cognitive dissonance between the two ideas, but you literally have them in a corner, both on the very end, like kind of pressed up against them, and you're making them have to argue for something that you don't even want them to actually agree to.
Mm-hmm.
So you've kind of shifted the whole feel of the conversation in that way. So maybe as like a closer, you could do that or something like that, or maybe just use it as a hypothetical. At least this is my opinion. Just say, if we were to hypothetically do this again, and we did that for humans, do you think you'd be on the opposite? I mean, where would you be on the scale for that? And then just let that happen, so they still have room to sit in their positions and think about moving on that scale still, as opposed to being in a completely different world, just defending. We don't eat humans. Animals are different.
Yeah.
Without
having them physically move. Yeah.
I do like the humanoid hypothetical that you brought up, because their reason was just based on species membership. And you had already tried to point out that that's something that's arbitrary and uncontrollable, just like race or sex. And so if it's just like a DNA difference, then you have, humanoid like beings who look and act just like us, but they have a slightly different genetic biological makeup. And so now is it okay to, torture and kill them just because we get pleasure out of it, like.
And you'll see in a second they both agree that it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if they really believe that, or they just want to, drive their point home and not reveal their cognitive dissonance.
And maybe, if more, if better rapport had been done, and if they maybe weren't as, and, if they were more open-minded to the issue and stuff, maybe then it would have, it would have worked out better as well, So.
This is all hypothetical too. I mean, it's hindsight. It doesn't mean that if you did all these things, it would have gone different. It's just attempting to dissect the best practice for the next time.
Yeah, and if you want to see a reaction like that, go to my channel and watch the second part to this video. And this is with someone who's just open-minded and honest. And I'd say that guy's more than likely probably vegan now. He moved several times on the spectrum. And that's just how it is when someone's objective and open-minded.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry, to the original point, to the original claim about non-human animals. Is there anything when you were standing over there? Is there anything that could have gotten you to move? Any data?
I think we should reduce meat consumption in general, just for climate change reasons, and most other cultures don't.
Not for ethical reasons, not for the victims.
I don't actually have a problem with that ethically. I don't.
Okay.
But for climate change reasons, sure, yes, because
are you the same? You just have an issue with it for climate change, or do you?
Climate change, the way land is utilized, how, again, just the way it affects communities in general.
Yeah.
That is probably one of my biggest gripes with the way that.
Is there any gripe ethically or compassion for the ones having their throats slit?
Ethically, it is priority, for me, that it's the most humane, looking for the most humane way possible.
Yeah.
Yes, meat can still be consumed, but look for the most humane way possible. Don't throw them in a blender, just look for
slit their throat quick.
Yeah. Look for the the least painful way possible.
Yeah. And
there may have been a little loaded language there.
Absolutely.
That was neutral. Come on.
little jab right there.
Little bit. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell. I'm sure just from talking to me for the hour and a half, I'm sure but I don't know if you can tell. But I mean, I've been doing this for 4.5 years, having these kinds of conversations, and when I find that someone I'm talking to, I'm this close to them, when I find that they're just so apathetic towards the suffering, my in this moment, my heart is breaking.
Yeah.
That here's two other people, they're humans just like me. They're part of my species, and they have zero regard for the suffering of someone else because they're not human. So yeah, I'm completely thrown off by a broken heart right there. So We'll
yeah,
get
and
better.
then sometimes,
We'll get better.
yeah, like I know for myself when I get sad in a situation like that, it quickly turns to anger, you know, and I'm lashing out at the person, and then I'm beating myself up later for lashing out at them and all that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we put a human in that position, it completely changes the
different because of
tables.
how we view other humans because of how we can see ourselves
Yeah.
in those other people.
What if we were talking about a dog and not a cow or a pig? Would that have changed your position at all?
We do have different laws around that. Like if you kill a
No,
dog.
not law, not legally speaking, just
No,
just
that's my
ethically
perspective,
speaking.
Is ethically speaking, it is
Maybe not
completely
interrupt.
different than killing a human. I guess.
No.
the-
Dogs.
No.
I just-
No.
yeah.
Spending a little rapport there. Sorry, actually, what I was intending to ask, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe like let them be heard, even if you need to clarify your question and they're answering a question that you didn't ask. It might be best to let them finish talking so that they don't feel interrupted. Because I know I hate that, but some people can handle it. But
Yeah, placing the burden of understanding on yourself can go a long way. If you say, "I'm sorry, I must not have asked that question the way that I was trying to. That's not the question I meant to ask. You know, let me rephrase it."
Compared to cows, I said.
Like if it was a, I mean, no, I really don't think there's a distinguishable. Like if it's something that you eat regular and it's available to you, you know, then no.
I know it's a culture thing as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You know, there's people here that have dogs as pets. There's people who eat dogs in other places because that is what is available to them. You know, that's, you know, we don't eat guinea pigs here, but then
You can
other
eat a guinea
places
pig somewhere else,
you eat guinea pigs somewhere else. Yeah, I just think that because is just for me, it's on the same level. That's really just like a cultural thing. It's really just a cultural thing.
But because something is culturally or historically or habitually done,
circular.
does that then morally justify the action?
So did someone say something?
I was just saying it's just circles. We're going in circles. It's
Yeah.
circular.
Right back where you started. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like I said, my moral system is that dog, cow, cat, like level lower down. But just for if
Again, with the
there's
lower down.
a difference in the way that you view a
Talk
specific
about
animal,
bringing it up. That's my guess for this
Culture.
guy. Go ahead.
then that's different for you. Me personally, that's how my moral system flies.
What if we stopped looking at it from our perspective and started looking at it from the victim's perspective or the one having their life taken? Do you think there would then be any difference? So, for instance, the human that would cry out and plea for their life in a slaughterhouse, right? We would say it's wrong based upon their perspective. Now, the cow that cries out and yells and you know has tears rolling down their eyes and wants to live, do you think, based on that victim's perspective, it's wrong? Would you think that they think it's immoral?
Again, I don't think it's wrong if you see yourself in that position as the animal, but the way that we are right now, the way that things are structured right now, and again, you're seeing yourself as an animal as opposed to a human being being in that situation. I don't think it's really a comparable thing.
Okay.
I don't think it is either. I completely agree with that.
Just agree.
Yep. And
Okay.
again, I do think, you know, with time, with how things progress and all that other stuff, you know, things will change.
Yeah. To leave you on this, I think you both kind of agreed that it's okay to kill animals, but just to do it in the most humane way, right? Why does it matter? If they're not victims or they're less than human, why does it matter if you treat them humanely or inhumanely? Why does it even matter?
I just find it weird to torture things, you know? Like if you're killing something, right? I don't think it is a moral problem to kill it. I do think it becomes a moral problem when you start to exacerbate that pain. Also, a problem with the person in general. Like psychopaths and stuff like that.
Okay.
With killing animals in the sense of looking for food, I do think that is something people do. I don't see an issue with that. But if you are just going around killing things
Yeah.
just cause, torturing things just cause, then that is the biggest issue, because there's different values behind there's different meaning behind that. You
Yeah.
know, it's like,
But if we have the other options, we don't have to eat animals. We could live healthily and happily on a plant-based diet. Then aren't we just doing it for pleasure, for taste pleasure, for habits and traditions and culture and all these things that can't really justify?
I see where you're going with it. I see the point that you're making. I can't help but feel like you might be putting words in his mouth. Unfortunately, I think he might be feeling that same way. He might be thinking that. He very well could be, but I don't know. I'd like it for it to come out of his mouth rather than yours, I guess. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
Taking the life.
No, you're good.
Throw away habit, tradition, and culture and act like that's just not a thing. Like,
Well, it's just not. It just doesn't morally justify any actions. I mean, it's been used to justify horrific acts in history. Culture. I mean, most people in society would agree that culture can't be used to harm, and that when it has been used, it's been erroneous.
And all the examples we give are for people, because that's a completely different relation. Than
Yeah,
how
because
do
we
with
haven't gotten there yet with non-human animals. Yeah.
You good?
yeah, I have a question.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for the conversation. Yeah. Cheers, man. All right.
The other
brother.
guy-
Yes, sir.
He didn't
Cheers,
want to
guys.
shake my hand.
Did you kind of pull away? I didn't catch it.
Yeah, the black shirt. He didn't want to shake my hand at all.
Too long way.
Mhm.
Is there
Well,
any
you
more
thanked
to
him.
the
That's good.
Is there any more to the video, or is that pretty much it?
No, it's just a sort of a preview of part 2.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how you had that in there.
Should we play it, or
Yeah. Let's watch the
Let's
preview.
do it. Support the channel.
What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going?
You want to get in on this?
What?
You want to get in on this?
What is
We're
this?
playing a game of. Were you listening at all? Oh, you were standing there for a while.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
you're having for an interview.
Yeah. Well, I'm Pete. Nice to meet you.
I'm Aryan.
Marian?
Aryan.
Arian, nice to meet you. So we're doing a game of spectrum epistemology, right? So this is the neutral line, and then we have slightly agree, strongly agree, and then in the opposite, slightly disagree, strongly disagree. And I'm asking a claim, and then I'm having you stand on neutral, count down to 5, and then you'll move based upon where you stand with this claim. Do you want to try it out?
Sure. I'm just.
Yeah.
Ooh, nice little transition there. That was clean. I like that. Cool logo too.
Alright.
So one thing I was thinking about is the claim itself that you used was, as you acknowledge, really, hitting them hard, which was, if you're not vegan, you're an animal abuser. One way to soften that, if you think it's appropriate to soften it, would be like, instead of abuser, abuse. Like, eating animals is animal abuse, instead of if you eat animals, you're an animal abuser. So it focuses on the action rather than the actor.
Take it off the person. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of testing the waters with this claim. This is the most forward and blatant claim that I've used. The other ones were much more like you're describing, Chase.
I'm also wondering about, like, what if you had several claims written down that they could choose from, or maybe like several claims in a bag or something written down, and maybe they're all related to animal rights, and the person need not even know that, but you could just be like, I've got a bag full of claims here, but it could all just be about milk is cruel, or meat is cruel, or frame it as a question, like, is meat cruel, or whatever, or you could make it still a claim,
Is eating meat unnecessary suffering?
yeah.
I like that idea.
And at least so that maybe, like, the first thing they see is it in question form, so that it's not making a statement necessarily, and then you can convert it into a statement with them to be examined. Or we could be going too far on that. Maybe it's okay for it to just be a list of claims.
Well, like you were saying, Pete, about struggling with your conversation partner's apathy. That's one thing I was thinking of, and I don't know, like, how somebody deals with this in a spectrum environment. But one of the like key factors of straight epistemology is exploring a belief that's important to your conversation partners.
Right.
And well, it's clear you're out here, you're doing activism, like that's what your goal is. I'm wondering like how valuable the conversation is going to be if you get two characters like the ones you interviewed who just don't seem to care. I guess there is value in like at least showing that they might not have good reasons. But it is sort of just an unfortunate circumstance of spectrum. I don't think you can get around that really.
Yeah, it's definitely when I first thought of doing this for animal rights, I realized that, you know, typically it's allowing them to explore a belief that they have, not me trying to have them explore a belief that I have, right? So it does change things quite a bit. But, you know, even if it was a direct, you know, sort of debate rather than SE, I think I would have had a similar result with these two. I think they still would have slightly dug their heels in. But nonetheless, the payoff is that I believe they'll certainly, you know, maybe they'd never had a conversation about this before. And with animal rights activists, we consider something called the 100-point system. And this is you know, something I've described ad nauseum. So sorry if, you know, anybody watching has heard this before and hearing it once again. But say you're at 0 out of 100. Say these two gentlemen were at 0 out of 100 points. 100 points is when you go vegan, right? And they never had a conversation about it before. They had that conversation with me, even though they left, you know, not being any closer to a vegan on camera there, but maybe that was worth 25 points. And then they go home and they discuss it with each other, and one of their roommates overhears them. And maybe their roommate is vegan, and they start to have a conversation about veganism once again. That gives them another 25 points. Now they're at 50. Then they're driving home, and they see a billboard that says, "Did you know all cows in the dairy industry are put to death eventually?" And that gives them another 25 points. Yeah. And then, you know, they call up their cousin, and their cousin is an animal rights person or a vegan, and they say, you know, I had this crazy conversation with this vegan guy, and it sparked some conversations with my friends. And their cousin, who's vegan, says, "Well, you know, I do some volunteer work at a sanctuary every Sunday. Do you want to go to the sanctuary with me next Sunday?" And they go to the sanctuary, and they meet some of the victims they would have otherwise paid for to have their throats slit for their taste pleasure, and they make the connection there, and they go vegan. Yeah. So, long story long, I think they certainly got some points out of that, you know? So
it's a good point.
Sometimes that's all we can hope for. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there. I think there's some truth there. Yeah. One thing I wanted to say was I think I have a little thought experiment that might be useful, and I'm not sure if I used this in the Discord that one time, Chase. Maybe I did after. Maybe I did the thing you were describing afterwards. But I like the Alan the Alien thought experiment. So it goes kind of like this. So Alan the Alien lands in my backyard over there, and he gets off his spaceship. He's never been to Earth. He doesn't know about humans. He doesn't know anything about Earth. But he wants to know if humans should slaughter animals and eat them. He wants to know if that's what should be done. How does Alan figure out if that should be the case or if that shouldn't be the case? And I like using that thought experiment when someone either says, this is the case because this is the case, and it's like 100% circular, or if they're saying like, I don't know any reasons, I don't have reasons, but I'm still really confident.
That's pretty much what my whole channel's about. I love it.
Exactly. But I think that might have been useful for maybe those two fellows, because it seemed like they had reasons that they could articulate. But then when pressed on it, it was just like, you know, so I don't know. Maybe it would have gotten them to reflect a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it was a lost cause. But.
I want to note on the apathy, but if you want to respond to that, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I think you'll see apathy in a lot of these discussions a lot of times because like I remember whenever in the video you were talking about like imagining the cow like weeping watching their fellow cows being slaughtered, and it's like why I see the picture you're pointing. They had not agreed that the cows understood that, and so they're like, it almost sounds like you're trying to make them feel bad on something they don't agree with. And I just imagine that it doesn't hit the same. So it's not like they're hearing like a real sad thing to them and they're like, I don't care. The story is not convincing to them. Like the world build is not there from that. And I mean, we see all sorts of things. Like, I mean, we see panhandlers on the street or something like that. And you might see them there for months at a time every day. And you're like, you might start to question, are they legitimate or something like that? And I mean, so there's a certain amount of apathy that can come about from not knowing first off, not understanding things completely. And also he wasn't defensive because he was being, cross-examined. He was being grilled. And it was either look bad in front of his friend or and then like lose to you because I mean you're getting pretty aggressive at the end, which is totally understandable. Very passionate thing. I get it. But like I think apathy and defensiveness and like self-preservation of the ego and like not being in the same world as another person, not being able to get to that point can make people seem a lot more cold and harsh when they're not being directly cold and harsh towards what you're saying exactly, but more of just the situation.
Yeah, defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, a lot of the things you did, I think, would be appropriate in a debate or a protest,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
or even in general outreach, but it does start getting into debate territory.
Yeah, and I wonder if it.
And that can be fine. It depends on what your goals are.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
when I talk about SC, I'm like, it's the opposite of a debate.
Yeah, and Chase, you've seen my other videos. This is probably the least SE that I've done.
I think so. yeah. That's why I wanted to highlight it, and but I'm glad you came in, and we're willing to get in the hot seat and all that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I want others who, other animal rights activists who might be afraid of having debates or conversations because they're afraid of getting too heated or too emotional, or they just can't imagine, they just feel like pulling their hair out, using this sort of approach to, like I stated in the very beginning of this video, to, sort of try to put some of that emotion at bay and allow these people to come to their own conclusions, to possibly have 2 or 3 or 4 participants having a conversation with each other instead of with you. And something else I'll point out that I didn't really notice until watching it this time with you guys is maybe my body language too. Maybe I shouldn't square off with them so much. And I'm thinking of other SE channels, and rather than being, squared off facing them, maybe I should stand more to the side, shoulder to shoulder, rather than face to face. That might even help.
Yeah, that could help you.
Yeah,
It's like collaborative body language, maybe,
yeah,
in a way.
Yeah. As far as like if you're running Spectrum,
Yeah.
Trying to get them to talk to each other might be awkward when, like, sometimes that'll naturally happen, but as a frame of reference, like generally speaking, I would say like have them talk to you, because they're gonna want to, because you're the one holding the mic, and you're the one asking them questions and stuff, and so trying to get them to answer a question you asked to someone else, like it can be. So I think just stick with, talk to the interviewer, and then but then, like I said, naturally they'll talk to each other when necessary.
Yeah. Well, and maybe if I frame it in the beginning of the conversation, because I usually do, you'll notice when Bogosian does this sort of Spectrum street epistemology stuff, he'll right in the beginning, he'll be like, "Oh, don't talk to me. Tell him, tell her."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
right
like
in the
that.
beginning.
Personally, I don't like that.
You don't like that, but I think it is has been helpful in previous conversations and may have been in this one because
Okay.
the dark shirt guy was already trying to sway the other guy. So maybe if I would have, said, hey, you talk to him, because they were on separate lines of the spectrum.
Sure.
I don't know. It might have been a completely different conversation had I said that right in the beginning.
Or you could say, tell us what your position is or why, right? Like
Sure,
me
sure.
and the person standing on the other line that I'm helping to interview,
Yeah.
tell us what your opinion is.
Mhm.
That's probably the best, I guess.
Good.
Another thing I was thinking as far as claims, most people actually are animal lovers and they are against animal cruelty. And that is probably something that's, pretty important to them. They may have a dog or cat, and would react very negatively if they saw animal cruelty on YouTube or in front of them or whatever. So a claim could be something like, as opposed to something where they're, more, if they're, a meat eater, they're most likely going to disagree with a claim such as, milk is cruel or meat is murder or whatever, but they might agree with something like animal cruelty is immoral or animal cruelty should be illegal. And they'll say yes to that, strongly agree even, and then you can get into the specifics of what do you mean by animal cruelty? And then, is killing cruel? Would that be on the list? Stuff like that.
Yep. And that's how previous conversations have gone. I've used more, I don't know if softer is the right word, but less blatant claims as compared to this one in this video. And I think maybe that's one of the revealing points of this, is that for SE in this sort of conversation, maybe that's not the best approach.
Yeah,
Unless
or
they-
like maybe animals should have legal protection or...
Yeah.
What were you saying, David?
Unless they pose it.
Sure.
Unless they present it or you get the clarification from them.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of loaded terms, and like it feels like you got to go into the debate right away when you read that. Like at least for me. Have you ever considered getting a lapel mic for you so you don't have to pull the mic away from him to stop him from talking?
I have, and I've tried it in some videos with the lapel mic. I feel like, I don't know, that the conversation is a little bit more like you can reel it in and sort of direct a little bit more so.
Or you can...
That's fair.
Another option is to get a microphone on a podium and put the podium just right in between you and the people you're talking to. I mean, not a podium, a mic stand.
Yeah. But then if they're spread out super wide on the spectrum, then
you can still pick up the mic stand at its base and point it like a long pole all the way across if necessary. Pierce is like, don't do that.
Just hire a boom guy.
Just get 7 microphones.
Right.
I'm just a guy using my phone trying to turn the world vegan, But
That's good for work for just your phone, man.
yeah.
Wait, that was with your phone? That audio?
Yeah. Oh no!
Bluetooth
I mean, I had a
mic.
mic.
Oh, yeah, the mic was
Red
connected
mic,
to your
yeah.
phone. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The visual, the shot wasn't that great because the lighting was really off that day, and I was too far away with the phone. But I digress.
Maybe get you some flags so you can have a better visual of the spots.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that. Matt knows why.
But I appreciate everyone's input, and I'm certainly going to go back and watch this, take note, and I think I've already I have some good takeaways from this, and we'll see how the next one goes. And maybe I just need to counter some of these with a where I sit at a table and have a blatant debate. So that way I can sort of get that out of my system and differentiate that sort of approach.
There's a time and a place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Different strokes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we should promote the Discord server of Street Epistemology. Are you in that group yet, Pete?
I am not. No.
Okay, cool. I'll send you the invite to that.
Okay.
And then also, yeah, the Vegan World server. There's a lot of trolls in there sometimes, but sometimes there's some really good conversations. And but it's heavy on debates over there. So
Cool.
But yeah.
We love trolls.
Alright.
Yeah. They make great activists once they go vegan, the trolls. They're the loudest and the proudest. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Thank you, every one of you
That's
guys.
great.
See you
Good
guys.
stuff.
Thanks for coming on, Pete.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Go vegan, you three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can convince 2-Day David to go vegan.
Yeah. You want to do a little bit right now?
Or
Or is this
Another time. Another
Yeah.
time. But I'm down
Alright.
for it. I'm down to discuss it.
Yeah.
2-Day David's was born yesterday, so he doesn't know anything. He's kind of like the alien.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Something
So,
to work with there. Yeah. Yeah. Whether
yeah,
or not
so-
you ever want to have a conversation on your channel or even in private, just let me know.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk soon.
Yeah,
All right.
or also on the Street Epistemology Discord channel is a great place for us to all meet up after the show and stuff. There might be people in there chatting already, and you guys could do Street Epistemology on each other till the cows come home.
Whole
And the
hall
link
come
is in
home.
the chat right now. Link in the chat to the Discord.
Nice.
Cool.
All right, with
Appreciate
that
you
being
guys.
said, I'll
Cheers, guys.
see everybody later.
Bye.
Thank you.